Hello and welcome to New York Empire Podcast presented by Greatest Ultimate Bag. I'm Dan Hilton. He's Matt Pippin Auletta, 2019 AUDL champion Matt Pippin Auletta. But unfortunately, you missed out, but your team didn't. The Empire are the 2023 AUDL champions. And Matt, let's get cliche from the very start. Words are being thrown out there. I've heard, Chasing History, obviously, the soon-to-be podcast, former radio show with Paul and Barbara Stevens and Bruce Babbitt and Dan Yacht, and they're going to be coming out. Chasing History, it was something the Empire were not afraid of all year. Like other teams were like, oh, we're not going to think about that. We're not going to worry about it. No. This Empire team from day one said, no, we are going to win that championship. We're going to be undefeated. We are going to conquer all. We are chasing to be the very best. That was from the beginning. And then now words are being thrown out. Fair words. Dynasty. 30 straight wins, ties the record by Toronto. Empire can break it with the first game next season. 2 straight titles also ties the record. That also means it's 3 in 4 years, and 3 franchise titles is more than any other team in AUDL history. It sounds like the league does have its very first dynasty. Now, I'm not saying that Toronto's weren't. They were a dynasty in the East Division, but to call it a league dynasty, you do have to win the AUDL title, I think, to a point. And I do truly feel this is the first league dynasty that the AUDL has had.
If anything, there was a separate Bo Kittredge dynasty where he won with the Spiders and then hopped to Dallas and then over to Empire. So, he was his own little dynasty. But yeah, in terms of just a team and consistency over a period of time, it's unmatched. And, Chasing History sums it up perfectly. They didn't want to just be the best. They wanted to be the best by far. They made their schedule hard. They went through the gauntlet and they beat pretty much every good team in the league. Maybe 1 or 2 they didn't face, but I mean, definitely, we mentioned it before, definitely the hardest schedule. And, they just trounced everybody. There were 1 or 2 close games. The closest game I think was Philly, and, not to slight Philadelphia, but they certainly aren't the upper echelon of teams. I mean, Empire might have just had an off night. Philly played well, but yeah, I mean, they just took it to all the best teams. They made, not to jump ahead, but they made Austin's offense look like children in the first quarter of that game after the initial stumble. And then Austin couldn't move the disc more than like 10 yards. It was wild. I was like laughing while I was watching and just, what are you supposed to do?
The 3 best games of the season for the Empire were East Division Championship against DC, against Austin, and against Salt Lake. They held the number one. I mean, there's just too many stats to go over. I mean, usually I'm pretty stat heavy. I've got a plenty coming, but I mean, yeah, for Salt Lake, they were the highest scoring team in the league. They were the statistical best offense of all time, and yet 12 points. They scored 12 points in the championship game. It's
statistical in some sense. The best offense with the best players is definitely New York. I don't care exactly how the numbers may skew some efficiency or, maybe scoring 0.3 more a game or, what, I don't actually know the numbers, but whatever it is, the best offense was New York. Even when they stumbled, I was 0% worried that they were going to right the ship, take their time, find their groove and just continue rolling and then let the defense do its own thing, which that's a whole different animal. That's just... Yeah. If you could be scared of Ultimate Frisbee, it's scary. It was scary how good they are.
Well, even the Empire O-line's D, because they did statistically play like a D-line all year. Their 2.8 opponents breaks per game is 4th lowest all time. The only ones better were the 2021 Union, the 2022 Flyers, and then the record holders, the 2022 Empire, who hold the record at 2.7. And it is basically the same O-line as it was last year. And I guess that's almost a feather in the cap of Ben Yacht, that Jeff Babbitt on the O-line defense was just 0.4 statistically worse than when Ben Yacht was the one helping to get the disc back last season. But yeah, it's basically the same O-line again for the second straight year, setting records and doing all those things. And, when going through this championship weekend and things like that, I'd not say I want to mesh the games together, but it was a full comprehensive, almost one weekend, one game, one full total domination display by the Empire. So almost like talking about those two in tandem. And I think what might be more constructive is to talk about, I'm willing to go through individually because I was there. I was with the players. I want to plug already. We have an exciting video coming out. The cameraman, Ben Phillips, and I were really working hard. We did many hours of interviews that I still have to weed through and B-roll and hours and hours and hours. So we are creating something to really tell that story. But with the players, you can almost go through individually, player by player by player, as to how they contributed and what they did to inspire this Empire team to the domination that they had. And I think going player by player, you start with Antoine Davis, the 2023 championship weekend MVP. And just to put it in perspective, right? I mean, you were not talking about him as a defensive player of the year candidate prior to that West Coast road trip. But since they went out to Colorado, 3 blocks against Colorado, 2 against Salt Lake and Salt Lake, 2 against Montreal. He held Christian Boxley to 3 goals and 19 completions, 2 blocks and 3 assists against Austin, and 3 blocks against Salt Lake. But again, that doesn't even tell the story of championship weekend. He held Kyle Hinkie, who me is one of the top 10 most talented players in the league on paper. 1 goal, 1 assist, 13 completions, and 2 turnovers, a +0 in the game. Then he gets Jordan Kerr, the league MVP, if Babbitt and Oscar didn't exist, was held to a +1. 1 goal, 2 assists, and 2 turns. 26 completions, but he had to work for every single one. Jordan Kerr this season had a +5 or more in every single game this year, except the +3 against Antoine in Salt Lake and the +1 against Antoine in the championship game. Lucas Ambrose ended the season with 24 blocks, which is still more than 8 more than Antoine. But if Antoine wins Defensive Player of the Year, I cannot imagine many will argue with that. Ben Yant and John Randolph, as we already spoke about on the show, they're on the short list. I'd say top 7 for the award because of just sheer stats. But the Empire setting the lowest scores against record, ending the season at 14.6, the only team in history to average less than 15, it would make total sense to me if the league voted Antoine Davis. Because again, you vote for championship weekend as well as part of that voting, which you could talk about whether or not that's fair to all the teams that don't make it or not. But because they do that, I don't see how Antoine Davis might now not be at least 50-50 with Ambrose, and how that is a real discussion and makes this vote very difficult. Where before championship weekend, I myself, I said, had Lucas Ambrose written in pen.
Yeah, so with Antoine, and shout out to me a few weeks ago where we were talking about good defensive players and who was maybe up there, but then I actually looped him into most improved, which seemed like a weird category for him. But then all during
for a 2-time champion and somebody 29 or whatever he is, like in his late 20s.
Sure. And also with a great statistical offensive performances in the past. But yeah, no, during the broadcast to hear multiple times from like BJ and Lepler and whatever, just that he might be the most improved somehow. I like to think I spearheaded that movement. But no, he was amazing. It was. The numbers really somehow undersell it, even though they're very impressive numbers. I mean, he made some of the best players in the league almost invisible. Like, watching the Austin game, halfway through the game, I had like a brain fart and I thought, wait, is Kyle Hinkie hurt? Is he not playing? Like, no, he was playing. He just was like, I'm going to use the term almost useless. Like, he was almost useless. He was invisible. He just blanketed, just shut them out. And, part of that also does happen because the rest of the defense is also playing amazing. And, players can't throw to their normal favorites or, hit the easy resets and keep grinding or do all these other things. But he just made really, really good players just poof, gone. Might as well have sat out.
Shout out you in the past, but also shout out to the Austin fan. And when they were up 2-0 against the Empire, I was sitting, so the rest of the team was not say concerned, because I can tell you there were moments where you'd see a face, right? Like a moment of doubt in an eye for a second, and then a teammate would come over and be like, no, it's us. It's always been us, whatever. And again, you'll see that in the little mini doc. But what I will say is, shout to that fan, because Antoine and I were sitting on like one of the bleachers, kind of just like the game is getting ready, and everyone else is kind of standing off to the side. Empire down 2-0, and this fan just comes over and really starts chirping at Antoine. I mean, really just going after Antoine.
Terrible decision.
And Antoine is sitting there by himself because, again, if anyone watches Antoine warm up, he does a solo warm up. Then he joins the team for mini and threes and different scenarios and stuff. But he's getting himself hyped. He's getting himself ready. And Antoine is a self-starter that he is. He's a 10. Don't you worry about him. He's there. But that Austin fan started chirping. And you just saw his dial. It was like the Animaniacs show back in the 90s. You just saw the dial like cartoonishly explode. And it's over for Austin, and this guy is to blame because they go on the field then, And it wound up being 7-2 to end the first. And that first quarter ends. Antoine comes directly back to the sideline, takes 3 steps up the steps, and goes, where is he? Just looking for this poor guy, because I think he just wanted more of it. He wanted to soak in more of it to give Austin more of what they deserve. So, I mean, for Austin Soul fans who might be listening, you got to find that fan that chirped at Antoine, because I find he is half culpable for what happened to you in that first quarter. Because, yeah, I like, you don't need to give any more fuel to the fire that Antoine has in him to start a game. And I was even, and again, I don't want to give anything away, but I was talking to Oliver, and it's so interesting to me about this team as well, watching their preparation at the weekend. Each player now, and why I call it a dynasty, and you hear this from Steph Curry and Draymond Green or whatever, different personalities, which the Empire have many, different personality prepare for these moments differently. And so to hear how Antoine gets himself ready and set and prepared for this is almost opposite from someone like Oliver, right? Oliver is very thoughtful. I mean, they both do the same thing. They both visualize a lot. It's a lot of mental stuff. They visualize themselves doing the great thing. And that is the similarity. But Oliver just does it with a friendly, with a smile. He doesn't mind like mixing it up with teammates and just having little light conversations. And they meditate before the game. They watch Seinfeld, like they get ready to go, and they have their own different, this is how I get ready. And being champions before means that so many of them on that team know how to prepare themselves in a way that it's not, again, no disrespect to the other 3, but the other 3 were first to championship weekend. They all kind of had to learn, like, hey, we're going to go on planes. Except for Minnesota, but we're going to fly to this place. We're going to be in a really nice hotel. We're going to stay in the nicest locker rooms we've ever had. We're going to play on this like professional field, and it's going to be a big deal. And this is a big deal, and the lights are brightest, and everything is on. And the Empire, not for a second, were worried about those lights. They knew what they had to do to win those games, and they executed perfectly. And even the moments in the meetings when the leadership for the Empire is breaking down the film and things like that, like they don't overlook their opponents. I mean, this is what we do in situation A, B, C, D. I mean, they were prepared in every iteration of what was going to happen. So it's not like they just say, oh, we're talented. No, I don't know how many other teams can do as much scout and as much X's and O's preparation as the Empire do. Because if they do, then, I mean, they show you that they don't do any extracurricular stuff until after the championship is won. It is all business. It is all professional from the moment those players get off the plane.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell that they were well prepared. I mean, I would expect it of the team, knowing just how things work. But I mean, most of their matchups throughout the playoffs, championship weekend, I mean, even most of the regular season, it's not often where I was watching a matchup and it was like, oh, why is Josue on so-and-so? Like, I would have thought Josue would cover, player X. It's like they just had it all dialed in from the very beginning. I mean, sometimes you saw some switches, or, if somebody's on the bench for a point, you get a different player in, and maybe it's not like the perfect cover. But in general, like 80% of the game, I just felt like everyone was covering the right player. And, then they can feed off each other, and they can switch properly, and they can do all the things that make them amazing. And yeah, it was just one amazing defensive performance after another. Even when the offense, the offense still played amazing obviously against DC, record breaking fewest turnovers, but even in the other 2 games, a little swirly wind, a few mistakes, whatever, but just never felt like that would be enough to derail them in any sense, because that offense is top notch. But just what the defense was able to do was just, as a former player, got a lot of friends on the team still. Sometimes you watch games, maybe in previous seasons, not so much this year, and I'm worried, or even when I watch my other favorite sports teams, it's like a 1-0 soccer game, and you're just sitting there sweating, hoping like they can hold out. It's like, it was really nice to just watch these games, be like, cool, my friends are blowing these people out. Like, I'm not stressed. I'm ready to just text them all, congratulations. It's a good time. And, they earned that. They earned that right throughout the season, that I felt like championship weekend was like a culmination of everything they worked for the last few years again. And, it looked like they were having fun out there. And you can't, I feel bad even mentioning it, but like, you can't even be upset that like, Antoine threw one throw that was like, maybe you didn't need to throw that. Or Josue kind of uncorked one, and it was like, Josue, that was a terrible throw. But like, they're up by so much and they're having so much fun. It's like that throw is inconsequential because they are just dismantling the other team. Like, go out there. Yeah, rip one. Like, have a good time. Like, you have earned this so thoroughly. Like, And it's crazy that they could do that during the highest level of play in these, semifinal and championship game, and they're just coasting and it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, it was frustrating for Antoine to have his first turnover of the season. Like, right, he was so close to finishing
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
40 or 40, but yeah, just a little bit shy. And to that point too, yeah, of course, like I'm there and we're filming and we're getting all this stuff. And I'm saying to myself, I mean, yeah, we had, just like the Empire did, I had a contingency plan. I knew who I was going to interview if they didn't win the championship game, right? I had my plan, like, this is where this will go. This is how this story ends if they don't win. But also, like, everything I did was I'm with you have a full trust that this team has done the work and the preparation, and they knew that. Not say that again, they're not taking it for granted, but they know they put in the work to be where they were. And speaking now, individual, let's stick with the defense real quick. Brenton Tan, 4 blocks against Salt Lake, and he returned to the championship weekend for the first time in 6 years. Most impressively, at Salt Lake, he had the assignment of Grant Lindsley, who is again one of the greatest and biggest game players of the last decade. And he gets a hand block on him and just covered him tight the whole time. Even against Austin, he just kept blowing up those unders. And Brenton Tan just turned 26. Like, it's remarkable. I mean, he was 19. He's one of those young Toronto prodigies, and he's basically from a missing generation we've talked about of Toronto players. It's basically him and Mike McKenzie, who are around that mid prime 20s, because everyone else was either in their basically your age, your generation, the Cam Harrisons, and even older than that, the Mark Lloyd. And then there's obviously the new generation with the Lewis brothers and Stonehouse coming up. And there weren't many in that little mini generation for Toronto. And Brenton Tan was it, right? So what a pickup he has been. I've been saying he's just a pleasure to watch. And again, very opposite, right? Like, for Ben Yot to compete, he gets himself in a certain mindset. There's a certain level of aggression that he really likes to have. And then you look at Brenton, and you see his face, you would have no idea what the score is. No clue what the score is. The score could be 40-1 Empire, or the Empire could be down by 4. Either way, Brenton Tan's face and disposition is the exact same. Same level of effort, same level of intensity, same level of calm. It's all the same every time. And so Brenton was fantastic. But the guy I'm going to have you talk about is Ryan Drost. Have you ever heard of Ryan Drost? I think you know who that is. All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he got 2 blocks on Friday to become the first to do 100, and then Saturday he gets the Callahan and another block for good measure. He's recorded multiple blocks in a game in 60 games, or sorry, let me get that right, in a game 60 times in his Empire career, and he's got at least a block in every championship weekend game for the last consecutive games. They're good, and they get a lot of blocks, Mike and Ryan, sure. But Ryan Drost, in particular, we're just talking about Ryan now for a second, he has an innate ability to get big blocks in big moments as well. What is it about Ryan Dross's psychology? And you can throw Mike in here. He's had some huge moments too. But what is it about their psychology, about both of them, that it's like, the lights are brightest, I don't care. If anything, I get better. If anything, I'm rising to the occasion. What is it about them knowing them that just it makes them so good? Like, I mean, there were still people who are very important in this league who don't know how to pronounce their last name, right? And like,
yeah,
and that's a knock on them. It's just that, like Ryan Drost and Mike Drost, because of all the players on the Empire, are not household names. They never will be, even though they own records. They never will be household names. But when the lights are brightest, they're just they're the best version of themselves. It's just, yeah. I mean, what can you speak to?
They both approach defense a little differently, and I think CJ mentioned this like way back at the beginning of the season on a podcast. Mike is sometimes a little more cerebral. Ryan is more like a feral animal at times. It's hard to say, but yeah, Ryan is probably the evil twin, and maybe that's where that like extra 5% tenacity comes from, and that's maybe why he gets some of them. It just visually looks different when they get D's somehow. Like Mike tends to do it a little more gracefully. Ryan is usually just head to toe covered in like scabs and oozing turf burns throughout the season. And I've noticed that Mike really doesn't have those. So they really approach it very different. It's just, what can you say? That bad throwing up, and I just didn't even need to see what was going to happen. I was like, oh, this is a Callahan. It's just, there's no way that guy was going to turn around, go get it. It's just like, Ryan has such a read on this. It doesn't matter how far it is. Doesn't matter. Like, this is deed. It's deed and it's dead. And sure enough, he gets it. And yeah, I thought Mike would get to 200 first, as we mentioned a few weeks ago, just sheer numbers. But just because Mike hasn't amassed the blocks either, he's still out there also smothering people and making plays really hard. And, he's tipped a few that got by, which I know he's going to be kicking himself for. But yeah, they're just incredible. They basically eat a lot of candy, and maybe that's it. Maybe everyone should eat more candy. I don't know if any children are listening to this. Work out hard, but maybe just make sure you eat a few Sour Patch Kids every single night before you go to bed.
I mean,
brush your teeth. Also, brush your teeth though. But yeah, it's crazy.
I would say maybe the most impressive thing Ryan Dross did at championship weekend was we all went to the Minnesota State Fair. The team did on Sunday. And at the Minnesota State Fair, there's a bucket of cookies. And so the team photographer, Jen, and the team psychologist, Gabe, and we got a cup. So it was like 15 cookies to share with 3 people. And we all were like, okay, we're done. That's it. But the buckets are like that number of cookies. And watching Nori Toe, who is a professional baker and has a full understanding of how much sugar is contained in these cookies, he was texting and messaging while we were at the gate, I have to find Ryan Dross. We have to get to the cookie station. And the joy that just, he'd not to say that Callahan had earned it for him, but the man eats sugar, to your point, better than he gets blocks somehow. It was a man in his element. This is not hyperbole.
Yeah. No. For anyone listening who's unclear, none of this is a joke. He eats more candy than anyone I know. Mike also eats a ton of candy. Ryan probably a little more from my recollection. It's crazy. Continue with the cookie eating. I'm excited to see how many cookies he ate. The whole bucket? Was the bucket his?
Listen, they over exaggerated how many of them needed buckets. You know what I mean? Like, I think 4 buckets could have done the group of 10 that was there. And I'm pretty sure they got 6 or 7 buckets. And when I say there was between 50 and 60 cookies per bucket, right? So, I mean, I think they all had at least 25 to 30 cookies over the course of like an hour or two, which is
also, yeah. When also just to pile on, when it's 1 a.m. in a hotel room and we're at a tournament, Ryan is eating the leftover slices of Domino's, and it's like, I just can't even imagine eating anything else, or like waking up in a few hours and going to play. Never mind then playing at a higher level than pretty much everyone else on the field. Which
does bring up a good argument that I saw people on social media making as well. That, like, to a point, yes, talent and like genetics are a huge part of it. Like, again, we're talking about Ryan and Mike like they're superheroes because they kind of are. Like, you can't you cannot expect to be 34 and run that fast and be that athletic and just be that great. I mean, again, Brett and Tan is not the same kind of human as me. Like, right? We're not the same. Like, and same thing with Antoine. Like, Antoine is just, he's a top 1% athlete in the entire league. And to that point, even John Randolph, like, you watch John Randolph on TV, and I know a lot of kids look up to Randolph. He's 24 years old. He's one of the future stars. He was actually the youngest player of the Empire's 20, to tell you how, not say how experienced they are, but yeah, how, like, if you don't have the experience to be there, and again, John Randolph, a Callahan winner in college at Brown, is the youngest player on that team, yet you could call him a star in his own right already, and he was just ridiculous. Randolph was ridiculous. 32 of 32 against Salt Lake, 4 assists, 2 hockey assists, and the hub of a defensive counterattack that recorded 9 breaks. And somebody on the team had said it. I want to give them credit for it, if I can remember. But they basically said that, yeah, like, Randolph is usually on one of the either the tightest initiation cutter, or if a lot of it comes from the backfield and pushes upfield and they work through the middle space with a lot of dominators, then Randolph will guard a handler, or whoever the handler that comes into the initiation space is. And so when you get the block, you think that Randolph should be the most gas guy on the field because he's pushing and fighting against the guy who runs the most on the other team. But Randolph then is the guy who goes every other on these defensive counterattacks. And it seems like when they get the disc, now Randolph's like, oh, I love throwing the disc. This is me. Now I get to play offense. And it's just, not only is he young and hungry, but like, even genetics physically, he is shaped like a box. Like, he's a shoebox. And his thighs and calves are just like up close and personal. Next time you're at the Empire game, it's super weird to say, hey, John, can I see your calves? It's super weird to say that. But in the same way, like, the guy is a mutant in that way. Like, the lower half of his body is stronger than yours. Whoever you see out there, it's stronger than yours.
Earlier in the season, I was standing next to him on the field, and for whatever reason, I think I had even seen him previous to this, but for whatever reason, I was just standing next to him, and I was like, oh, this guy's big. Like, he's not the smaller-ish player I thought he was. Like only a little taller than me, but he just looked like a stack of bricks. Yeah, they're just
Yeah. Well, and speaking of
yeah.
mutants and stack of bricks together, Jeff Babbitt championship weekend played 17 points for the weekend. 17 points. Like, just conceptualize that. Like last season,
No, that's also crazy. There's everything about the whole weekend. That's why it's just I laugh because it's like, what are you supposed to do or even say about this
how
stuff?
many
It's
points do you remember how many points Jack played in the championship game last year? I feel like it was 21 or something. I think because he played the most last season, did Jack, hence why he won the playoff MVP. But I feel like in the championship game, he played something like 20, 21 points. David played 17 points in 2 games. The Empire allowed this. I mean, again, these are, I can't comprehend these. The Empire allowed one goal at championship weekend while he was on the field, playing mostly on the D
yeah.
line. One goal. He scored 10 goals in 17 points, right? That is 1.7 goals per point. He had 6 against Austin before taking his cleats off at halftime. And then he had 4 more on Saturday.
Which was amazing because I had texted him before the game against Austin, maybe the day before. I just said, like, stay healthy out there. Happy to see you're playing. So maybe it was day of. And he responded like, thanks, I'll try. And then, at halftime, he's just like decleating because he's already racked up more goals than I think I ever scored in a game. And he's just, he's done. They're coasting. They don't need him. See you tomorrow. I'll be ready for the championship game. So I was like, well, I texted him back. I was like, that was one way to do it. Like, that's great job, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other funnier ones from the Austin game even was fourth quarter comes. I believe it was Anthony Nunez or one of the two, or Charlie Hoppes. They came over to the O-line. They said, hey, take your cleats off. You're done. We're going to save you for tomorrow. This was 4:30 left to go in the fourth quarter. O-line takes their cleats off, right? And John Lithio, meanwhile, another member of the O-line, is standing, cheering on his defense, doing what you're supposed to do on the sideline, like fully committed, fully bought in. It's not till 2 other points afterwards, when D-lines have gotten to play O-line, does Lithio, with 1 minute remaining, turns around to see all of the O-line stretching on the floor without their cleats on, and he just goes, oh, so I guess we're done now. And it took him 3.5 minutes to realize that that he was done. Like, no one told John, it's okay, you can rest now. Because John wanted to finish that game, but the rest of the O-line were already done. And again, it was just like all those little moments where however many talented players you needed, the Empire had that in spades, right? And again, it's like, oh, but you put the D-line on because you're coasting. But it's not that. It's that now Ben Katz, a former O-line player, and Antoine Davis, a former O-line player, and Ethan Fortin, a former O-line player, and Mike Drost, a former O-line player, and Marquez Brownlee, a former O-line player. Like, they just get to play O-line for 3.5 minutes of game time, 4 minutes of game time. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read you the rest of the Empire 20, and you pick out what stuck out to you and what you want to mention. Because we're not gonna hit everybody, but one of my goals until we finish the show is to literally name every person that contributed and kind of give them their flowers, not with an individual sentence or whatever, but Ben Yacht, Ryan Oscar, Jack Williams, Ben Katz, Salman Rushmeyer Bailey, Marquez Brownlee, Oliver Chartok, Elliot Chartok, Charles Weinberg, Josue Laurel, Mike Dross, Jeff Holm, Ethan Fortin, John Lithio, Shankalati. Every single player there, I have a memory in my head of something they did well. Some point that was theirs, some moment that they had, and you can go back to the East Division Championship as well. Just everybody had a particular moment when it was theirs from the entire 20.
I don't even know where to start because the list is overwhelming. And when you really watch the game and you get to see all of those D players play, everyone is standing out as like doing their job or slightly better. Just real quick, I don't even have a specific example, but he probably played a little less than some other D-liners, but like Jeff Holm is an amazing piece and was all season. And like on most teams, he's probably starting on a D-line, and he's just like, Jeff, if you're listening, I don't mean this disrespectfully, an afterthought on this team, but like he's so good. He's so good, and he's a good offensive player too. Like when they get the disc and he starts playing offense, he also looks like a really good player. Like I might have even said this once before. Like if you just told me you took any of the 20 that usually play on defense and threw them on a different team's O-line, like starting O-line, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like they're probably good enough. It's just You could probably say that about anybody. I was happy to see that Josue was okay after taking that knock, and didn't really know what happened from the stream. You couldn't really tell.
Yes. So they so he the opposing player he just barreled right into Josue, and they got it right in the gut, and it was also hot. So like again, I think it was just a natural body response. Yeah, and it was a frustrating play, but obviously everyone was worried when you see that reaction when you see them having the issue that they did medically right afterwards, and cleaning up the field. And it was scarier than it was. And they were just frustrated with the play.
Yeah.
Important thing. Yeah. Then they finished. They came back into the game. They finished.
Yeah. So that was
game in a game.
That was.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. No, that was great to see, because then it's not a serious issue, because the medical staff is on top of that sort of stuff. And then not that it, again, you could probably remove a few players from the team for the championship game and they'll still coast to victory the way they played. But Josue, great defender, also spent a little time on Grant in the backfield. Like, it's just a good matchup. It would have been unfortunate if Josue couldn't play, but happy to see that they were able to continue. Also, extra soft spot in my heart for Josue, because Josue got crucial Ds in 18 to get us by Toronto, and then just important Ds when we needed it. Same in 19. So I was happy they could be out there.
I kind of said about Antoine too. Josue's been around a long time, and they have just gotten better and better and better. And they might have not been fully committed to start this year, and it took some prodding, it took some convincing to be a part of this. But once Josue signed up and said, "All right, I will commit myself to this," yeah, they were sensational all year long. Ben Yacht story that will not show up in the documentary I have for you on the sideline, right? We talked about reputation, and this is obviously Empire propaganda, so how many non-Empire fans are listening? I don't know. But if you are, Ben Yacht has a reputation. You know that, yes, he talks a lot. He wants to spike it on the opposition. He wants to crush their spirit. He wants to see their tears. He wants to lap them up. I get it, right? But against Austin, things get a lot chippy in the direction of Elliot Chartok. And Elliot, who has a nice smile, he's got that church boy look to him, and and I think he's a handler, so it's just you expect calmness or whatever. Well, Austin, things got a little rowdy, and he wasn't too happy with some of the stuff, which is totally fair. You saw it on the feed. Some extracurricular activity on the sideline when he scored a goal, then somebody made contact with him that incidental. I'm not sure about that, right? And Elliot took exception, which is totally fair. So then when the Empire really started piling on, Elliot wanted to let Austin know. And who else but Ben Yacht says, no, come here, put your head in. We worry about us. This is who we worry about, right? So for all you say about Ben Yacht, that man has a myopic view of how bad he wants to win and what winning will take, and he is never deterred from that. So what I will say about the reputation of Ben Yacht, like, there is excitement and there is aggression, yes, but he never once this whole weekend directed it at the opposition in a way that was counterproductive to the team, right? Like there was no going off on his own and having a matchup or taking something personally. No, like he did his talking on the field like he always does, like we know Antoine does, but the focus was myopically on the Empire and their mission. And again, I'm not calling Elliot out. Again, Elliot had a fair reaction to be targeted or feel like he was targeted in the way he does. The fact that Solomon Rice-Mayabeele takes the physical abuse that he does week in and week out and does nothing with it, he's a better person than 95% of us, because the amount of, again, the fact is a lot of teams say, well, we can't, what can we do with Jack? What can we do with Oscar? How do we stop Babbitt or Yacht? So who can we stop? We're going to be physical with Weinberg. We're going to be physical with Saul. We're going to be physical with Elliott. And we're going to try to disrupt the Empire at the point of their resets and not allow things to happen. So I think a lot of teams have decided that's going to be the way forward, that they're going to try to gum up that attack and see what the referees call. And again, Saul just takes constant contact and just shakes it off. Doesn't worry about it, whatever. And
in the Austin game, Austin often was like very close up on the marks, trying to, just invade that disc space, make the throws a little whatever. But I thought the refs did an okay job of policing that at certain points. I think Austin was a little more physical than they needed to be at times, but you could also just tell that even if it bothered Empire in some ways, they also were able to just like play out and around it. And, sometimes being too close and too physical is a detriment, because then as a thrower, you get rid of it and somebody's like trying to bump you and they're all off balance, and maybe you just take off and run and they're not really, their feet aren't set, and you get that extra separation. And the last thing you want to do is give some amazing players that extra space they need to really operate and get their motor going. For Ben Yacht, there was some subtle chirping. I know Faye from Austin, I think, once got the best of him, and he gave him a little too short taunt. And then, it felt like the next point, I know it was pretty soon, disc goes up. I see Yacht. I know he's going to catch it, and I just said to my wife, I was like, he's going to too short him the second he scores. And sure enough, he comes down and he just very subtly trots away with his hand behind him, like, oh, too short, too short. And yeah, it was perfect because, they're exerting their will on them. You got the best you got once, sure, good for you. But yeah, when it matters again, yeah, it's not going to get beat twice in a row on the same play there. So I loved it. I loved the too short right back at him.
Yeah, and I would feel like, and this is, we didn't talk about them, but, to Charlie Hoppus and Anthony Nunez, credit to them as coaches too. Like, it's not even just about like getting everybody to buy in and egos and a whole course of the season and playing time and all those different things that you have to manage as a coach, as well as, the scout and strategy and all that stuff. But there was something that was different from this weekend than it was for the regular season games and road games. There was, as I said, about the Elliott and Yacht story. Elliott did nothing, again, egregious or uncharacteristic or whatever. Just Elliott was a little frustrated, so he wanted to chat with Austin in negative ways. And Yacht, very much like the coaches, everything this weekend, and this is a privilege certainly to be as talented as they are, everything this weekend was about the Empire themselves. It was this one cohesive, one unified mission where every person there, from the top of the roster all the way to staff, whoever, everybody had the same goal. It's that if the Empire are holding that trophy at the end, it doesn't matter anything else outside of this thing. And I think, again, that is a mark of championship teams and dynasties that, again, they have the privilege to do that. But again, it's also the coaches that to be focused and to keep everything together, especially when family and friends and things are there as well. Like, yeah, there are distractions everywhere in Minnesota, as well as like championship weekend. There's a lot of other players from other teams who are there. Hey, want to hang out, want to talk, want to chat. And there was something about the Empire saying, we have a job to do, so we have to do that job. And again, that's also credit to Hoppus and Nunez for just being completely locked in that whole weekend and saying, this is what our goal is, and this is what we're here for. And again, even shouts to the bottom of the roster too. Like, you ask after that championship weekend, right? I see the question to be asked, like, we don't know. Like, as someone who asked a lot of the players, like, you ask me, is XYZ player coming back? I don't know. Like, the Empire, we could go through their whole 30-person roster, and I could give you a reason why, if this player doesn't come back, it makes sense to me because of life or because of this commitment or age or injuries or whatever it may be. There's a reason why every member of this team may not return next season, right? And then again, I could also see everybody just wanting to run it back. But again, for the younger players on the team, on the sideline cheering on their teammates, Zach Burpee, Oscar Kohut, Matt Labar, Nori Toe, Bobby Elson, and Matthias Ling, all 6 of which are 24 years or younger. And talking to each of them, they're all on that sideline saying, we're not wishing injury on our teammates, of course, but they understand, like, one day Father Time will come for everybody, or life will come for everybody on the team, and it'll be their turn. And they want to be ready for those moments. Like, credit to Nori Toe. He was at his 5th consecutive championship weekend. And he holds the record for least minutes, that being 0, at a championship weekend. He's played 0 minutes in 5 championship weekends. But it's a testament to him and his own confidence and belief in himself and dedication to team. I asked him the next day about the game and about his future with the Empire. And he said, well, it's my turn then. If anybody leaves that O-line or those D-lines, like, it's me. I prepared. I fought against the best players in practice for years, for 5 years of my life. And I'm still just 24 years old. It's my turn. You haven't seen the best of me. And that's the right mindset to have. And then everybody else, Angelo Okese, 26, Scott Shue, Ryan Holmes, Matt Cat Stevens. Like, it is a full, it's everybody bought into something. Ryan Holmes is the captain, played 0 minutes. Matt Cat Stevens built this roster, played 0 minutes. Like, that requires a selflessness that, again, it's a privilege the Empire have all these talented people. And yes, you can buy in when you win 30 straight games and win 3 championships in 4 years. But what makes it a dynasty is that the idea that the Empire train will stop rolling is almost nonsense because of that very reason. You could tell me you're going to lose 4 players from that O-line, and you still have to believe in what the Empire are doing because there was such buy-in on that sideline from 30 people.
Yeah, you could lose a few people and you wouldn't bat an eye, and they'd still probably be the favorites heading into next year. It would have to be like the 4 MVP caliber players for you to even start considering like, oh, well, maybe they're not as good. To speak to it, the buy-in from everybody is amazing. So many of those players could be on an O-line or, Boston's not that far away. Philly's not that far away, especially for some of the Jersey guys. I mean, they could play probably as many points and minutes as they want if they were on a different team. And, or even if they don't play on an ADL roster and they just don't play because it's a large time commitment. I mean, going to practice in New Rochelle, I don't think many people from the team live there. So, they're commuting from all over. It takes time to get there on, typically a Wednesday night and, dedicate an hour to get there, a few hours playing, an hour back. I mean, those are long nights. And then all the weekends you're away. There's just a lot goes into it. And then to like barely see the field or not see the field, or get rostered for like 2 or 3 games, that's a large commitment. But you are playing with and against some of the best players in the world week in, week out. I mean, that in itself is a privilege and it's amazing. And, that even when Empire in some of the earlier seasons before I stopped playing, when we weren't, the best, we had such a tenacious defense that you were getting such high quality reps on a daily basis, the weekly basis at practice against your teammates that games, even when we didn't win the games, they still usually felt a little easier than practice, than the grief your friends and teammates who knew you a little better could just give you at practice. Izzy Bryant just like holding me and shoving me and, in a good way, in a way that made me better. And that's just one player, but like that's how everyone approached it, just trying to beat each other and like best each other when it's the best in the world, all going at each other like that. I mean, yeah, I could see why people would want to do it even when they don't get to play that much. It's amazing. And yeah, that's why they did so great.
Yeah, I mean, it's family and friends too. I mean, all the fiancés and girlfriends and partners and again, the parents that travel and just the support that those Empire players have. I mean, it says like, what do you need? And like, I looked at our support staff too. And again, it's a privilege that a lot of us even exist and are there, right? That we had trainer Ryan, assistant trainer Alexis, scout CJ, director of operations Ellie, stats and game day Tommy, marketing director Victoria, team photographer Jen. While team photographer Evan was not there, again, he's at home watching, cameraman Ben, team psychologist Gabe, head of merchandise Melissa, my other broadcasters in yourself and Tony and Trisha, who was there, and then the owners Paul and Barbara Stevens. I mean, it was just like, there was just a horde of people as well that are like, again, it's what do you need, right? Like other teams are like, we need water or we need like cones or whatever. Like, but it's Empire, it's like they have the compression boots. I don't want to give away all trainer Ryan's secrets, but they do. They have compression boots, and they were accused of doping because they have those bottles of oxygen on the sideline. Because because John Randolph's big meat pistons get cramped very easily with the heat. Because again, both legs weigh 60 pounds, so of course it can cramp easily. So he needs a little extra oxygen. That's $10 in a can. I don't want to hear it about that.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Barbara. Team owner, but she was the one making, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for us all those years ago, and probably still does. Yeah. So, I mean, it is top to bottom. Everyone there excels. They go above and beyond. They make sure that it is an amazing experience. If you're listening to this and you want to join the AUDL or, you're on the cusp or whatever, Empire is an amazing place to be. If, and they're setting the bar, not just because of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but because of every little detail, every little thing. And, other teams are going to need to keep pushing their own limits, whether it's the smaller stuff off the field that adds up to a better collective unit or just the player acquisitions or everything. I mean, they are pushing the league to be better and better and better. And, teams aren't going to want to lose like this over and over and over. They're going to keep upping their own game. They're going to figure out ways to either draw in more talent or, work with what they have a different way, or just, it's not just going to be like, oh, Empire's going to roll everybody for 10 years. Who cares? We'll just let them roll us. Like, no. I mean, when Toronto was rolling us for years, we hated them. I hated those guys so much. And, a lot of them are nice people. Don't tell anyone I said that. Let's cut that out. We'll cut that. No, but for real, most of those guys were pretty nice, but I hated them. I still hate them.
Yeah.
So, it's like, how many times can DC just lose to the Empire without like really just I'm sure they want it more than anything. And to the other teams out there that were close in a championship weekend, I mean, you never know when you're going to get another chance, but you can't tell me that they're not going to try a little bit harder, or the organizations aren't going to get a little bit better when they see what the Empire is doing. So yeah, top to bottom, they are pushing the envelope, and it's amazing, and it's great to see. And I hope the rest of the league catches up, even if at the end of the season I always want Empire on top.
Yeah, I mean, the average age of the Empire at championship weekend was like 28.5 was the average age, and Salt Lake was like 24.3 or something like that. So it's like Salt Lake is building something. They're in year 2, and they're putting things together, and they won the West, and they now have an ability to attract talent in different ways. And as you said, like, it's all those little things around the margins too that make it an enjoyable experience for these players. Like, it is every summer is the summer of their lives to be able to say, okay, what's our goal? We want to go to championship weekend. Even if you were one of the teams that came up short, it's like you've learned things from that championship weekend to improve your team. And yeah, to that point, I asked him, Jack Williams is not immortal, right? Like, again, like, a lot of the core now of the Empire is either over 30 or or is bellowing upon 30 very shortly, right? So there will come a time when generations change, as you said about Toronto, right? And nothing lasts forever, but the Empire have built something that they're hoping lasts forever. Again, like, I'm not taking anything away from Oscar and Jack and Babbitt and Yacht and, the stars that really, again, top level talent wins you championships. I don't want to get cliche about that. But again, the Empire from top to bottom. And even when I listed everybody, I know I missed somebody like Tim, who was driving the shuttle. Like, most of the people in those off-field stuff that I mentioned, those positions I named don't exist for most teams, let alone do the jobs they all do to the very high standard that they do them, right? Like, they could all just sit around and not do what they were assigned or what they're paid to do, sure. But, it's not just talk. Like, even us as a staff, we try to push each other to be just, again, myopic about what the point is. Like, I mean, yeah, I went as a broadcaster and I wasn't on a broadcast. And yet for me, every part of me was like, I mean, you could just sit in the stands and watch the game. Like, you can just relax, right? But again, for me, it's like, no, like, look at what they're doing. Look what everyone else is doing. Like, you get almost nervous, like, being like, no, like, what is my purpose? Like, what can I do to my highest potential here? And of course, like, again, buying into a winning team, like, this is easier than signing up for a product that doesn't guarantee wins. But there are a lot of people who work very, very hard to give these players every advantage that they can do what they need to do on the field, and also to look good doing it, because that's a part of growing the league as well. It's like making our players as marketable for young players as possible, right? And it's like Antoine Davis, when he's on the field getting D's, he looks cool as heck. And again, Jen was capturing those photos and the broadcast and all those drone cameras and technology. And now you can watch Antoine Davis looking awesome in 4K, right?
Also a male model, correct? Is he a male model?
He is a male model, yes.
Yeah, so you're also just beautiful in addition to athletic and amazing and fierce. He's got it all going for him. Yeah, so
absolutely allergic to shirt. If you ever seen him warm up or break it down,
yeah,
you're allergic to a shirt. But for us, we're keeping him on. And yeah, the only thing left to plug, I guess, before we do that, yeah. So Matt, just give us the recap, end it, say goodbye. You and I are going to take a little break from the podcast for a little while, for a few months. But yeah, so break it down. Was this season, because it was exactly what we thought it was it even beyond what you could have expected from them this season?
Somehow, yeah, it was beyond what I expected. I knew they were the favorites going in. I thought it wouldn't have been unreasonable for them to lose 1, 2, 3, 4 games somehow at different points. They played really hard competition. What they did was amazing, is really all you can say, both offensively at times and defensively pretty consistently throughout the season. What they did was amazing. And you got players from the bottom to the top of the roster contributing. It wasn't like, oh yeah, they're leaning heavily on 10, 12 players and they're just really out there amazing. Like, no, there have been other undefeated teams in the past. This team would wipe the floor with probably all of them. And that in itself is a testament to everything they've put into it and how good the players are. Yeah, they're top notch. The whole organization is top notch. It was fun to be a part of it, even in a very, very small way, and just, see some of the games live and even just get to talk about it. And yeah, top notch is what I'll say. Yeah. And I would be shocked if they didn't win next year, if next season is anything like this.
Yeah, I will say, yeah, it was a privilege to be a part of an organization, because, again, as a fan of Ultimate, as a fan of the sport, as someone who has watched every grainy SD tape I possibly could watch from 2003 UPA college championships to 1988 Worlds with New York with assistant coach Dave Blau. Like, I've tried my best to consume as much Ultimate as is healthy for the human brain. And I could say that this is, again, without bias, the best team I have ever seen. The most complete, the most athletic, and the cleanest. And they, in essence, like, teams now know what the bar is. Like, young players can now see, if you're 16, you could be as good or better than Jack Williams. The game will continue to change, but they have set a standard. Like, you know who to emulate. You know, like, what I try to do with the players I work with now, I try to give them a top level comparison to what they should be, who they should watch, who they should emulate. And I usually don't have to go beyond the Empire. I can, if you're a young player, I can find you to play on the Empire that fits a role, like the way that the game is going. You can be like that player. You just have to start tomorrow, and you have to work, well, start today, and work really, 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 really hard. Yeah.
I will say one more thing. I want to shout out one more person real quick. Solomon Rushmeyer-Bailey doesn't get the love he deserves for just being a rock back there. I know from like playing local leagues and stuff that some of the people really, really love him and appreciate him, and they see more of themselves in him than other players, because, you know, not everybody can jump through, you know, a 13-foot hoop like Jeff, or, you know, they're not 6'5" like Ben, or 6'6", or maybe their blades aren't as lethal and precise as Ryan Osgar and all the stuff he could do, or, you know, maybe they're not freakishly athletic like some of the defenders. But, you know, Rushmeyer-Bailey, a little bit of an every man out there, just doing all of the important gritty stuff without a lot of flair, but that he's a rock back there. So shout out to him.
I'm glad you shout him out, because bad news is, due to his schedule and ours, Solomon Rushmeyer-Bailey is the one player that we didn't get to interview. So, not everyone will show up in this show, but everyone did sit down with me and get attached with a lav mic, who was of the 20, with the exception of Solomon Rushmeyer-Bailey. But jokes aside, if you want to know who Sol is, he and Lithio were the contingency plan if the Empire didn't win the championship, because I knew, win or lose, John and Saul, they're going to give you themselves the same way every time. If they handle winning, they handle losing. And again, they're the rocks, personality wise, on the field, in every way. You need grinders like Weinberg, like Lithio, like Saul. You just need the guys who show up, don't take too big of a pie, and just want to be part of the best team ever assembled. So, yep, shouts to the greatest team of all time. There are no more games to plug, but again, don't go too far. We were busy at championship weekend, and we aren't necessarily done with the 2023 season just yet. Like, not time to move on. It was just on the weekend. So subscribe to the channel. Keep your eyes and ears ready, because as soon as this weekend, we hope to have something to you. But of course, we will see you soon.